right, it is Sunday, December 25th, 2011, and last night, Saturday night, I had a discussion with a lot of people who are interested in NVC, nonviolent communication, and had a really interesting discussion and really appreciated the thoughts and everything that was shared. And I'm still having some, I'm still processing some of the ideas that were discussed, and I wanted to get some of this kind of out verbally as a kind of cathartic way of maybe thinking about this stuff. And I'm not sure exactly where to begin, but I'll just start rattling off some thoughts that I'm having, and hopefully they'll make sense for people. So, NVC, nonviolent communication. I guess one of my first questions is NVC always an appropriate strategy? Isn't it a encompassing philosophy and worldview and paradigm, or is it a strategy appropriate in certain situations, maybe not appropriate in others? So a situation, a situation I'm thinking that where it may not be appropriate is in a situation that you'd normally expect someone, or allow for someone to have a self-defense. If someone's in the process of being attacked, then if we allow them the right, I guess you could say, or if we can legitimize their acts of self-defense to use violence to defend themselves against initiations of aggression, then I'm not saying that NVC would be inappropriate in a situation where someone's being attacked, but it may not be the most effective strategy. It may, be one strategy you could use, but, self-defense situation, self-defense might also be another strategy you could use. If you're dead, none of your needs get met. If you are kidnapped indefinitely and put into a cage, few of your needs are being met. For a long period of time. So I think each person has to, my thought is that each person has to subjectively decide, based on their own values and based on their own, needs, and to decide which needs they want to try to get met. And I guess this leads to another thought. While, one of the foundation stones of NVC is that there are no conflicts in needs. And while this might be true, there might be no conflicts in needs. Is it possible that, is it also foundational to the theory that a single individual's needs, all of their needs can get met all the time? Is there, is there a scarcity of the world's ability to fill our needs? So, I'm wondering, we might have a need for safety, but, if we are in a situation alone in the wilderness and, there are wolves or bears or some natural occurrence going on, then do we, our need for safety isn't going to be met by nature, so a unfeeling, unthinking, unreasoning thing. So we might want to say that there is, some instances in which, in the real world, in which our needs aren't necessarily going to be met. There is kind of a scarcity, or I don't want to create an over scarcity, of course, theoretically, but I don't know if there's an abundance in the world of need meeting that is necessarily always going to be in our lot. There's circumstance and and luck, so to speak, that might play into this. So I guess that's one thought that I'm having, that while there may be no legitimate conflicts between people, and I think this is completely consistent with the NAP, or non-aggression principle, or non-initiation of aggression principle, and also consistent with natural rights, in terms of property rights and persons, in theory, there are going to be very, very few instances in which there are true conflicts, and and those conflicts are generally fairly resolvable within all these theories. So I find the NVC kind of assumption or premise that needs are never in conflict to work out. I'm not sure if it's again, I haven't thought of all the philosophical counter examples, but that's one of the thoughts that is coming in my head. So then we were talking about voting. And my kind of position on voting is, while I might not necessarily choose to vote, I certainly am not going to tell anyone else that it is illegitimate to do so. I understand a lot of people, they feel very strongly about this in either directions, or in both directions. And, I feel that the argument against voting, that no one should vote, that there's something, illegitimate, or as some would say, that voting is not going to get your needs met. I agree with that part, that voting really probably isn't going to get your needs met, It's kind of a false choice, right? And I don't want to go too extreme too quickly into this example, but one of the thoughts that I had as an analogy to this is, the superhero or action film analogy of the bad guy has two victims, and he asks the hero, which victim do you want to live, or which victim should I kill? You choose, And so this is really a false choice, right? So the hero can choose nothing, and then the bad guy will, of course, give him the ultimatum that I will kill both. Or the hero can choose one or the other, and usually the hero, to have a happy ending, somehow the hero is able to save both. But let's say the bad guy is putting this choice in front of us. Well, voting might be that kind of choice. Neither choice is actually going to get your needs met. Neither choice should leave you with a happy feeling necessarily. But if the bad guy has, two persons, one person's a stranger and another person is, a family member, then, are you wrong for saying, let my family member live? I don't know if the ethical, analysis is going to put blameworthiness on the victim of this choice rather than the bad guy who initially proposed the choice and enacts the evil. So that's kind of where I'm thinking on that. So I think that voting can be seen as an act of self-defense. It is as an act of persons trying to, in a bad situation, trying to affect a better situation or a more preferable situation, or try to prevent a less preferable situation from occurring. And there certainly is, I think, a very good argument from the standpoint of a person who says, well, we shouldn't interact with the bad guy at all. We shouldn't give them the time of day. We should not do anything that might, legitimize this false meme they have in their head and that others have in their head, and that by, voting, we are, affecting this, false illusion of choice and freedom, and this is going to make the struggle for liberty all the more protracted. And there are these issues going on. And while that's the case, sorry, my daughter is trying to where are we going? She's trying to tell me where we're going, so alright, I guess we're going somewhere different. Sorry. So, yeah. I can totally see the argument from, and I think it's a legitimate argument. If you say, I will, we should not have any dealings with, these kinds of persons, that, their claims are illegitimate from the start, and thus we will not do anything that would legitimize this. Of course, this would mean, I think this would mean, to be consistent, to have integrity in this principle, we would have to extend it not just to voting, but everything. You really can't start to begin to pick and choose. As soon as you start picking and choosing, we're back to each person subjectively choosing according to their own values, how they want to get their needs met. What values are more important to them, and try to achieve them. And while we can say, well, giving legitimization to illegitimate claims is not going to get your needs met, if your value in the moment is to get a greater need met, you might not have the option in a particular situation to get all of your needs met all the time, all at once, simultaneously. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I don't know. There might be, a slight... there might be a possibility that there is a kind of scare... Whoa, not in the road. I tried to make a mad dash for the road. there might be a scarcity of the world's ability to meet all of our needs all the time simultaneously. That we might have to do some picking and choosing. And this is kind of an economization of needs, so to speak, right? So, if there is a perfect, if there's a perfect abundance and plenty of, need meeting in the world, then we don't have to worry about these problems. But if there is the possibility that there is a kind of scarcity of need meeting ability in the world, then we have to begin to economize on getting some of our needs met when others might not be. So, if we take this perfect position of never legitimizing or never pretending to legitimize illegitimate claims, then, should we ever show up in court? If the charge is baseless and illegitimate and, the whole agreement is non-consensual, then we would never show up in court. We would never vote. We probably wouldn't use the roads unless we were actually going to homestead them. We wouldn't we wouldn't pay for public water or public utilities, or, we would totally not interact with any kind of status, illegitimate, organization in any way. And that is a consistent, stand, and I respect that for anyone who can do it. Maybe I don't have the integrity to go that far, or, maybe there isn't other possibilities. Maybe, we can make personal choices as to how we economize our needs, and someone might say, well, if I am killed or if I am put in a cage, then very few of my needs are going to get met, so I am going to economize exactly which my needs are going to get met in the moment, and maybe I'll make my stands where I feel comfortable to make my stands, I don't think I'm open for, discussion on this, but I'm not sure at this moment whether that is necessarily, an absolute lack of integrity necessarily. I don't think that the victim in a situation of initiation of aggression can be, accused of having lack of integrity because they don't take the perfect stand in terms of cooperating, complete non-cooperation or compliance with the aggressor. The aggressor, the idea is that, violence, you normally wouldn't use violence in your life, yet, under initiations of aggression, there might be, in self-defense, that, violence might be legitimated. And similarly, things that would normally be, that we would expect the saint, so to speak, not the ethical saint, so to speak, not to do, might be legitimate in a context of coercion, in a context of violence. Things normally might not be, perfect according to principle, might be legitimated because of the initial initiation of coercion to begin with. So, if voting is seen as an act of self-defense, then while it is ordinarily, wrong to, commit acts of violence, if we want to consider the voting to be an act of violence, if it is, self-defensive, well, there might be a legitimate argument to be made there that, if you have Hitler on one side and Obama on the other, is not wanting Hitler so wrong? And even though the vote cast probably means nothing and absolutely gets none of your needs met for choice or anything else, and the entire system is illegitimate and rigged and all sorts of wrong from the very beginning, could we see it as an act of self-defense to say, well, I would rather be hurt less than more? And if I have one millionth of a say in the outcome, can I not use that say? If you're going to just open it up and say you get 1/millionth of a choice, which is no choice at all, of course, your needs aren't going to get met. Absolutely, I totally, acknowledge and agree with that. But does that mean that you can't do it? Can you do things that don't necessarily meet your needs if, they have... Okay, well, so voting is not going to... All right, so now we're... don't eat that. I'm sorry. I'm about to eat a pine cone. I suppose that wouldn't have been so bad, but but I didn't identify it at first. I thought it might be a clump of dirt or rock or something. I didn't want to choke. So, yeah, if you have 1/1,000,000th of a choice, is that a choice? So it's only really a choice, or it's only meaningful choice, if the vote is exactly tied and your vote happens to be the one that pushes it over the end or not. Is your choice in concert with others? I really like. I'm going to move on, I think, from this and just see what people say or have a discussion about. Scott brought up a really good, example in terms of ethics. Is the congressperson who votes on or signs a piece of paper that might violate individual rights, is that person responsible for the violation of the rights? And at first my inclination was to say no, and then Scott brought up a really, really good point that, well, if you have an expectation that this thing is going to be obeyed and that these rights are going to be violated, and you agree to that, then in what way aren't you complicit in the actual act? And I'm going to have to give this up to smarter minds than myself, because I'm at the time I conceded the point because it seemed also very reasonable, but given some little bit more thought on the matter, I'm back to I don't know, because if the congressman is responsible for the violation of rights, then, because they have a reasonable expectation that the rights would be violated, that people would obey the law, and that the rights would be violated, geez, that creates really kind of a sticky ethical system in terms of lots of things. If the actual rights violator, which is probably going to be a law enforcement officer or a jailer or these kinds of things, if the end rights violator is not responsible because of the law, so the example or analogy that was given at the time, I believe, was the mob boss. In what way is the mob boss responsible for the actions of his mob crew? And on one hand, I want to say, well, he's responsible in terms of, that makes sense that the mob boss would be responsible in terms of his understanding that his orders given would be he has a reasonable expectation that they would be followed through, that these would violate rights. So say the mob boss orders a hit on Bob, and so there's an assassin coming after Bob, and Bob defends himself from the assassin. Is Bob also, in his, rights of self-defense, to have self-defense violence on the mob boss? So, is this a conspiracy to commit murder, which allows you to, in self-defense, murder all of the people involved? And oh, jeez, I'm gonna give that up to smarter minds, because my head begins to spin at all the, So because one person ordered a hit on Bob, now two people are killed in self-defense. Although only one actually initiated the aggression, the other initiated the transaction or payment or order to initiate the initiation. I don't know. This is getting into some tricky places, and I'm not sure. So, yeah, that's those are my kind of like the two things that are kind of spinning in my head. Voting and ethical complicity with laws and orders, and that's where I'm at. So it's December 25th. Feliz Navidad and yada yada yada. But those are my thoughts.